All right, we're live.
Hey, EDU300, it's Becca and Billy here tonight, and we have another awesome GHO with some education rock stars. We're going to be talking about formative assessment and apps for engagement, and I'm going to turn it over for Billy to do some intros.
All right. Okay, thank you, Becca. Thank you both, Catherine and Casey, for joining us this evening. Looks like we have Laura and Angela there. As always, we'll go ahead and we'll archive this on YouTube so you guys can use this as reference to check back in. I want to introduce both our guests today. I'll start with Catherine. Catherine is a former 4th and 5th grade teacher who focuses on designing authentic, future-ready learning environments through the use of personalized mobile devices. She currently works as a middle school instructional technology coordinator in Arlington, Virginia, supporting teachers in technology integration and one-to-one iPad implementation. Catherine is Apple's Distinguished Educator. She holds a master's in integration of technology in schools from George Mason University and has received recognition both within her district and nationally for her work with students. So, welcome, Catherine. Thank you for joining us.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Awesome, cool. And our second guest is Casey Cohen. Casey is a proud member of the Apple Distinguished Educator class of 2015, best class ever, and English Department Chair at in Philadelphia Performing Arts Charter School, a string theory school. It's Apple Distinguished one-to-one paperless school where each student's primary learning tool is an iPad. As Department Chair, Casey is the lead curriculum writer for high school English courses, all published in iTunes U. Casey has 9 years of teaching in the classroom. She has 9 years experience teaching in the classroom. Prior to working at PPA, she taught English to grades 6 through 12 in the city of suburbs of Boston and Philadelphia. So, thank you, Casey, for joining us.
Thank you. So great to be here, and so excited to talk to you guys all about SAMR and up-leveling instruction and using apps in the iPad to do that. So I just want to tell you a little bit about my story before jumping in, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about my school and show you some student work and give you a tour of iTunes U and some great resources that will be available to you there. So just a little bit more about myself is up until I started working at string theory schools, I had never held an iPad. So all of this is brand new to me. Basically in the past 2.5 years, I got the job, I came in for the first day, I held the iPad and everything changed. And I would just say, like, my biggest piece of advice is learn from the students and just don't be afraid to try new things, because our first class starting as a 9th grade, they're now juniors, and we figured it out and we learned it all together. And that's just been an amazing journey and learning process. So I just kind of wanted to start off with that. And just speaking of my students, I am going to show you a little glimpse of what a day in our school is like. It's a 2-minute clip. Apple came and made a movie about our school that you can find in the Apple Real Stories. And this video is kind of like the student perspective. So this is what a day looks like from their side. And just bear with me in case the video freezes towards the end. Very possible.
Well, Casey's loading this, like, the things that they do at their school with their students are pretty amazing. I was super impressed when I saw this video, and I shared it with you guys before.
All right, are you ready? Can you see it from your end?
Mm-hmm. We can see it.
Okay, here we go, great.
I love to come to school, and I love to learn new things. At my previous school, learning in general wasn't fun and engaging. But after 1 month at string theory, I knew I was home. At string theory, you get to pick a major.
I am an instrumental music major. It helps because music connects to everything: history, math, science. At string theory, the way we learn just opens up so many more opportunities. We don't carry around books. We carry around iPads. We use iTunes U all the time. It's cool to have every aspect of all our academic classes on one device. The teachers make their own courses, and they can post different assignments in the iTunes U course and what projects are coming up so we can be more prepared. They will say, go explore the App Store and find different apps and show me what you learn, but in a creative way instead of just taking a test.
I love to be creative, and when I'm creating a new project, I have more opportunities, more possibilities. I'm exposed to so much more, and teachers challenge me so much more. I'm more excited to come to school and learn because I'm engaged.
Using the iPad just changed my whole perspective on learning and being able to express yourself. There's, so many things I'm able to do now that I would never imagine myself doing before. It just makes you look forward to coming to school every day.
My future looks like the sun, bright as it can be, because everything that I dreamed of and everything that I set a goal for, I know that I'm going to achieve it.
Cool.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to jump into now a keynote that has some student work. So bear with me as I switch over to that. So as you saw in the video, can you see the keynote now?
Yes. Got it.
Okay, great. So as you saw in the video, the iPad is really the driving force of everything along with iTunes U. And just to tell you more of our story, all of the teachers have this time every day where we collaborate. So my planning period is 90 minutes, and it's not an individual planning time. It's 90 minutes of collaboration. So we meet with the English department, and we're writing our courses together in iTunes U, and we're modeling this process of collaboration for the students. And when we think about SAMR and redefining and up-leveling learning, in what I've learned is that you really can't do it as an individual, both on the teacher and the student side. So the innovation comes from the collaboration and the discussions and the ideas that get generated from a group, so that whatever the group is outputting is greater than the sum of the individual parts, and that's both from the teacher and the student side. And so we work every day on our courses, and because they're in iTunes U, they're easily changeable and revisable, and we make little changes and big changes, and we go back and we rewrite every day. We're working on that. And the courses, the brand new courses that we write, are literally getting written and unfolding every day as we create them. So let's talk about SAMR now and workflow and kind of what I just mentioned. If we're really going to delve into SAMR, it starts from the teachers. So how can teachers create material that are going to up-level and redefine the learning experience for the students? And that's kind of what iTunes U allows us to do in our courses. So in a minute, I'm going to start to jump back and forth between iTunes U and this keynote, so just kind of bear with me. So teachers create original content. So we create keynotes. This is just a page, like a simple page of what that would look like. We create documents and pages, and we post these in our iTunes U courses. And this kind of starts the learning process off for the students. They will download these and they'll push them into an annotating app like Notability, and then they'll take it from there. But what I've learned over the past few years is we can do more than just the basic keynote or the pages document, and we can make the learning material interactive so that that starts the up-leveling process right there. So I want to show you a little of iTunes U, and then I'm going to jump into student work and then go back to iTunes U, just in terms of what would some teacher examples of this up-leveled work look like.
Casey, that's awesome. And while you're switching over, can you just clearly define up-leveling for our students?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what I mean by up-leveling is that the level of thinking combined with the quality of work is higher and deeper than previously before. So the pedagogy is you're using the technology to kind of make the pedagogy and the learning experience deeper and richer and stronger. But it all kind of starts with the idea or the pedagogy, and then the iPad is kind of the tool that enables that. And that's really both what I hope you get from my little talk is that it's both from the teacher side and the student side, and they both work together to create the fully redefined. If we're going to talk about SAMR and that highest level of redefinition, I think they both fit together.
That's awesome. Thank you for the explanation.
Yeah, cool. So can you see my iPad now? Just confirming.
Yes, we can.
All right, great. So I wanted to show you and I'm going to show you what the library looks like at the end of this, but I wanted to show you just what a course looks like when you're writing it. So this is our 11th grade course, and for example, we had this big unit on speeches and monologues, and at the end, we had the students write their own speech. And instead of giving the directions, like writing the directions out in a simple Pages document or in a Keynote, this was the first time I used the app Adobe Voice to create the assignment. And then the students could basically open the link and listen to it as a reminder, all while they worked on the long-term project. So I'm just going to play the first couple parts for you. I just realized that the sound might not work, but you'll see the visual, and keep our fingers crossed that the sound works. You're not getting the sound, are you? So you kind of get the idea, at least, of what the Adobe Voice is like. So Adobe Voice is a slide presentation storytelling tool, and you can kind of see I'm explaining the stages step by step. So I wanted to show you an example because we love Adobe Voice, and I just wanted to show you 2 other examples just to kind of fuel your ideas. So in our 9th grade course, we're doing a unit on the hero's journey. And you can read iTunes U courses either, in many different ways. This is kind of what the information page looks like. And there's an outline of the course, there's the standards, and this is kind of the overview. The posts really give you the full extent of the lessons and the specifics. But if you're looking for something quick, just like I am, you can find it in materials. And we recently created these notes on the hero's journey. And we use the app ThingLink to create them so that going through them would become an interactive and engaging experience for the students. So this is what the notes look like, and the students click on the dots, and they get images and notes to kind of help them along the way. So it becomes, as they're going through it, they are interacting with it instead of just looking at it. And ThingLink actually liked this so much that they recently published it on their website. And then the other kind of just learning tool from the teacher view is using iBooks Author to create content. And I did this with my AP students. So we actually created a class resource book. And this is really also my bridge into up-leveling student work, is to think about how you can have them create resources for each other. So we created this book, and basically each team of students took a page or took a turn. They created a sketch note, which you can see, and then using iBooks Author, it can become clickable. So we put the examples there. And there's a video explanation of what the terms look like. And the book is fairly extensive, so they were pretty proud of it. We also included, just at the end, some sketch notes of what a rhetorical analysis would look like. And so they were really proud of it, and just thinking of up-leveling work, this was a team effort. Me and my students put this together. So just to kind of show you some examples from the teacher side. And now I really want to jump in to what does it look like from the student side.
Pretty cool.
Bear with
I'm
me.
impressed.
Jump in.
And what I love about any of these tools here is your ability to include anything from multimedia components to analog components. You can really upload and include anything you want. I mean, the only limitation is your own creativity. So nice,
exactly.
nice
Exactly, and I think you can get the more ideas and the more heads you have collaborating on this, the richer you can go. So, student-to-student collaboration, student-to-teacher collaboration, it's all good. All right, can you see the keynote now? Are we back on that?
Oh, yeah, sorry. And just another point is, and getting back to what you said at the beginning, Casey, a lot of this can be super overwhelming, and of course, Casey's just giving you a view of what the possibilities are. But just think back to, your students are your allies. They can teach you a lot, and you can authentically model what it means to take risks if you're not comfortable with this technology. So don't be afraid to take a risk, and you'll be surprised what your students can show you and what you can, the trust you can build with your students.
Absolutely, and just to kind of jump on that, last year when I was applying to become an Apple Distinguished Educator, I actually hadn't used iMovie. I had assigned projects in iMovie, so I knew what it could do, but making my very first iMovie for ADE last year was actually my students who showed me how to make the movie and how to put everything together. So
yep.
They're a tremendous resource. All right, so jumping into some student work, and I took a series of works and examples, and wanted to just talk you through what up-leveling through SAMR means. So I started with just an example of substitution and augmentation, and then we're going to end up with some examples of redefinition. So with the iPad, my first piece of advice is to start simple and to start with one medium. So let's take a really easy assignment, have the kids show an understanding of a literary element, and that could be setting or plot, or in this case it was the internal conflict. But I didn't tell them how I wanted them to do it. I just said use one medium. So they could have written it out. They could have composed a song. This student chose to make a sketch note. So the idea of augmentation goes with giving them choice and kind of connecting to Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence theory and letting the students decide how they want to show it. But again, not getting too complicated, just sticking with one tool. So in this case, they just did a simple sketch note in Notability. Could have been done in in many different ways. So jumping now, kind of what the next level would look like. Again, so these two assignments, the one on the left was to show a comic strip of a certain act in Romeo and Juliet, and then the example on the right is just to show the conflict in the Crucible. And so my next piece of advice is add acts to enrich the content. And now we start to go from, like, if the first slide was substitution to augmentation, this is now kind of, it's being augmented, it's being enriched, and it's just kind of on the cusp of starting to be modified. These were not major projects. What you're looking at were just simple one-night homeworks. And so these were both created, well, the one on the left was students at the end of freshman year, and the one on the right was students at the end of junior year. So they had experience and time working on the iPad and getting to use the different tools. So I gave them a task, and I didn't say you have to use 3 acts or you have to use this and this and this. I just said, create a comic strip or show me you understand the tension. But because they knew what tools were available, they were able to kind of embellish what they created originally. So the original app was, or the original project on the left was done in halftone 2. It couldn't have been done in any comic strip app. And then the students put it in Notability to draw the crown and to add the quote on the bottom. And then they put all of their photos and comics into Pic Collage to just kind of collate them. And then on the one on the right, this is Paris and Giles Corey in the Crucible, and it's just showing their conflict. So we used this really fun app that we found last year called FaceQ, and that helped the students create the characters. And this was done by juniors, so they knew more apps that were available. So we've been working with Book Creator a lot. So they just created a simple page in Book Creator and used that to actually get the thought bubbles. And then they finally put it in Notability just to get some of the annotating and sketches on the bottom done. So this is still kind of sticking one, kind of two mediums. We've got words and images going along, but it's nothing fancy, but just the idea of starting to app smash and starting to go from one app to the other to embellish is starting to create more of a richer experience. It's not as, we're not as deep as we can get, but it's just kind of going up the SAMR model. I can pause for a second. Any questions before I kind of jump to the next level?
How you feeling out there, Angela?
I'm doing pretty good.
How you doing, Laura? I think we're pretty good.
This is great, she says. We do have a question about pre-made units available on iTunes U, but that's probably something we can maybe look at the end, show some one best things in iTunes U.
Yes, absolutely, okay. That's the plan.
Cool.
All right, so I have a couple more examples to show you. So let's take a traditional personal narrative that you would assign in really many grades in English. Like that could be on elementary, middle school, secondary, kind of just getting more sophisticated as you go along. So then my next kind of piece of advice is to add different media for a stronger connection to the content. So when you start to add media and the students are choosing what media to combine, this now starts to go into the modification. I think this is really what starts to modify, and the iPad really lets you bring those different pieces of media together. So this is a student who wrote about a trip to Albania, and I'm just going to play you the first couple seconds just so you can kind of get a sense.
Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen, to Flight 428 from New York to Albania. At this time, please take your seats and fasten your seatbelts so we can begin our flight, says the voice on the intercom as I listen intently. I then turn my attention to what is going on outside the window of the aircraft as my legs dangle off my seat. I feel an urge of nervousness as this long journey ahead of me proceeds. Although I have already experienced this 10-hour-long flight before, I've never done so without my parents by my side. This time, it's just my younger sister and I.
So the student who created that is an instrumental music major at string theory, and she actually composed the music that you heard in the background. And she was able to find original images from her family. So just kind of, there's not a lot of fancy app work here. It's really all created in the music was created in GarageBand. She wrote the story in Pages, and then she put all the images and music and words together in iMovie. But it was the act of combining the media that made, I think this is a stronger story on a higher level than just turning in a basic written personal narrative. All right, now we start to get a little bit more, a little deeper. So if you've heard me talk before, you've probably heard me mention one of my favorite apps, which is the Martha Stewart Craft Studio app. And unfortunately, this app is off of the App Store as of very recently. But I wanted to just kind of show you the examples because there's many other apps out there like Canva that can really accomplish something similar. So the next kind of piece of advice is starting to add both different apps and media to really get to that redefinition. So this assignment is something pretty similar. The idea was just to create a chapter summary of Into the Wild, and it's a hard nonfiction text. We read it with sophomores, and we went deep with the book, but the first level was just to get a basic understanding, and then we evaluated the main character, and then we evaluated if the author was a fair author. But this was the assignment that got us started. But we wanted the summaries to have, again, to show different ways to connect. So we wanted the students to find or create original images that would depict the setting. We asked them to write summaries, 4 to 5 sentence summaries, to both practice the skill of summarizing and to show understanding, to find one piece of textual evidence, and then to use the app, the idea of a scrapbook, to bring it all together. So if you were to make a scrapbook of the chapter, what would it look like? And you can see, like, the students, this was done by a sophomore. This was an original photograph, 2 original photographs, edited with different photo editing tools. So that was kind of the first stage. And then writing everything in Pages or another writing app, and then kind of put together. This is a much deeper and richer summary than just the 4 to 5 original sentence summary that could have been done in Pages. And it's taking a boring assignment kind of and making it a little bit more interactive. And then the next example I'm going to show you, I have this and then one more quick one, is probably one of my favorite pieces of student work ever. And it's something also I think that you can relate to a lot of different grade levels and subjects. So it's the idea of a constructed response. And that's something in Pennsylvania we practice for our state test, the Keystones, in all subjects, English, science, math. The idea is that you're asked an open-ended question and that you have to support it with 2 pieces of textual evidence. So as an English teacher, we practice this skill a lot with students in writing and using apps creatively. So for this assignment, we asked the students to use 2 different apps and 2 forms of media to create an open response to a question that was asking how a certain character in a nonfiction story, The Color of Water, has grown up and matured throughout the text. And she used the stop motion app. She recorded original sounds in GarageBand. She cut out different paper with actual real paper, and then she put everything together in iMovie. Okay, so you can see that's kind of that's a much richer, I can tell that that student understands the story and how Ruth McBride grew up on a deeper level than I would had she just written it in a paragraph. But because they do need to practice those writing skills, we do a combination. We'll do some projects that are like this and some that are written and then some that are both. And then I wanted to end with my final example, which is something that I'm going to share right after this in iTunes in the One Best Thing collection. But one of our fellow Apple Distinguished Educators, Don Goebel, has created a project called The Six Shot Story, and it's a play on Ernest Hemingway's six-word memoir. And the idea is that you take 6 words and create a story and then 6 original either photos or videos to go with them. And I love this assignment. I bring it into English and a humanities class by asking an open-ended question and then asking the students to create, you know, a response that's in 6 words that they can use to respond to it, and then kind of use, so if the 6 words turns out to be their thesis, then the images turn out to be their examples that support the thesis. So this is just an example of one that was created in a humanities seminar, and the question was, how does trauma influence community? So it's a really deep question, and they had to use examples from a novel, from the historical Civil War, and from their own lives to support their answer. So I'm going to show you the video, and then we're going to jump into iTunes so I can show you where to find these resources. All right, so any questions? I'm going to jump back into iTunes now. So any questions for before we do that?
How you guys feeling up there?
Good so far.
Good, okay.
Soaking it all in.
Trying to.
So Bear, my QuickTime just disappeared, so as I bring it back and get my iPad back here.
Awesome.
So if you have iPads and want to follow along with me during this section, that would be awesome, either way. Okay, great. So can you just pull the iPad back? All right, here we go. So you have an amazing wealth of resources available to you in iTunes. Can you see the iPad now?
Yes,
We good?
we can.
Okay, great. So if you go into iTunes U, which is a free app, and it looks just like this, the orange one. So if you go into iTunes U, there's a repository of courses. So you can hit featured, and all of the courses will come up. And it acts very similarly to iTunes for music, but with courses that educators are writing. And the most amazing thing about them is that they're free. So a couple places, it's a vast resource. There's lots and lots of stuff out there. And so I would recommend using it just first as find 1 or 2 things that you can use to inspire your own lessons. And then if you find 1 or 2 courses that you want to teach from, that's great too. But just know that you can use them both as actual teaching tools and tools that you can use to kind of curate and create your own content. So the first place I want to point you is just the standout courses. So Apple will feature certain courses as their standout courses, and these are really great to look at just as models of how courses are written and different ways to write these courses. So these are there. And then I want to just, if you kind of go down with me, I want to show you where it says using apps in the classroom. And these are books that Apple has put together to show you how to use certain and specific apps. So like if you wanted to learn how to use Sketch, or you wanted to learn how to use Erasmus or Sketchbook Express, you could download the book, and that could be a really cool project to learn with your students and kind of go through the book and teach them how to use the app as you're learning it. So that's an
Oh, sorry to cut you off.
No, it's okay.
I'm hearing a little feedback on myself. Oh yeah, that's just like would be perfect, especially if you got a student who's interested in a certain tool or presents a certain tool to you and you're unfamiliar with it. That'd be a great spot to look and just kind of check it out and see the features of the tool and be able to learn that basic operational functionality of the tool and what the possibilities are. So that's pretty cool.
Exactly. So let me just show you a couple other resources that Apple has put out here in iTunes. So the next place you're going to want to look is where it says For Educators. So I'm going to hop into that now. And in For Educators, there are some really great resources. So the first thing I want to show you is if you kind of scroll over, you'll see a box called Lessons for the Classroom. And these are courses that Apple Distinguished Educators have written. And these, I don't think of them as courses like I start my course in September and teach it through until June, but think of them as more like units. So for example, I wrote one on Stories of War. It's the Literature Circle project, and that's a unit that I do with my high school students. And if you look above it, there's a unit on Romeo and Juliet. So they're not like little lessons, but they're not the entire year's worth of curriculum. But there's some really great ideas, and these courses are designed for people who are using technology, so iPads and computers and so on. So they've got some really good ideas in these courses and you could either teach right from them or read through them and use them as inspiration.
Awesome.
And then the other tool that I want to show you in For Educators, if we kind of go back, is if you actually hit Tools for Teachers, this is going to bring us to the App Store, and this is an amazing wealth of resources just in terms of apps that are out there. So if you're like not really sure where to get started and what apps to try, they're organized by classroom management, just some basic tools to get you started, time savers, get inspired, projects, and so on. And then I know we're running short on time, so the last thing I want to show you is the One Best Thing collection. And if you kind of click on that, that's going to take us into iBooks. And this is where I got the idea of Don Gobel's Six-Shot Story. So it's the One Best Thing collection, and these, just kind of like the Lessons for the Classroom, are resources that Apple Distinguished Educators that have written and that have been published by Apple, and they're just really great project ideas. So, and they're organized just like Lessons for the Classroom by subject. So language arts, math, science, media. If you look under arts, music, and media arts, that's where the Six-Shot Story is. And it's just to put a plug in for that book, it's amazing because it's really well written and clear, and there's some really good student examples in there too. So it was really helpful for my students just to see that. So I'm sure I've overwhelmed you and bombarded you with way too much information. But I think I'll stop now.
Well, what I love you did is what Beck and I are trying to do is here at the end is, we can tell you about things, but we want to show you where we access our information and where we get our wealth of knowledge, because we rely on our PLN, we rely on people like you coming to work with us tonight, and we're always growing, we're always learning too. I'm sure Beck and I can speak for myself for now, I learned quite a bit tonight just listening to you, Casey, so that was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
As I just commented, one of the best roles that I think Billy and I can play is as guides to show you where you can find resources, because that's where I find a lot of support for my ideas and any innovations in my practice. So really it's learning how to find the resources.
Absolutely.
And it makes a big difference. Thank you, Casey.
Sure. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to connect with me on Twitter. I think Billy has my handle. It's at CI Cohen. So I would please stay connected and reach out if you want to go over anything.
Totally. I actually ended up sharing your websites and your Twitter handles
Awesome.
with class, so that can be accessed if you remember. It's right on our Google Classroom wall.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
we are on to authentic assessment with Catherine. Catherine, it's your show now.
Hey.
Welcome.
So, it's so funny because Casey's like, sorry for bombarding you guys with too much information. I'm like, oh my God, now I'm going to bust out like 25 more minutes of it. So here we go. Okay, so I'm kind of switching gears just slightly, but really not too much, into formative assessment and looking at the module document that Billy and Becca shared with you guys. They shared with you guys a lot of really great formative assessment tools that you can use after a lesson or after learning to see their understanding. And so I kind of wanted to now share maybe a set of tools for a different purpose that will also be for formative assessment. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my doc cam and talk via that for right now.
Yeah, it worked.
Okay.
Nice.
Yay.
Love it.
Yay. Okay. All right. So when I talk about authentic formative assessment, one thing, just to give you guys a little bit of background for me, is that I've only worked in Title I schools, and so one of the big things about Title I schools is that you have students of so many different backgrounds, and with so many different backgrounds, it's really hard to just take a look at a correct answer or an incorrect answer and be able to decide, you know, like, okay, what do they really need help on? So one of the biggest things that I realized is that every one of my students, being able to figure out what they need is almost like glancing into a window into their mind. And every single student's window is different, and just looking at, you know, if they got an answer correct on a quick little quiz or Kahoot for me sometimes just wasn't enough. And so if that wasn't enough, what else could I do? And so that's when technology became so valuable for me, because there were so many ways to peek into a student's mind, a student's learning process, and how I could help them through something like a window. And so when I talk about a window, I'm talking about like how can I glance into their learning process during the learning time? Meaning like what kind of formative assessment can I do where they are showing me their understanding, but I'm not taking time after they learn. It's the time that they are experiencing learning that I'm taking that work and being able to see, okay, so that's my formative assessment. What can I learn from that? So what I wanted to do is just quickly share with you guys 4 of so many different possibilities of how technology really enhances this opportunity for us to sort of peek into each student's like their window. So Casey kind of showed you guys, actually everything that she showed you of her work are ways that you could turn into formative assessment of their understanding of reading comprehension, their understanding of a concept. So the 4 things that I'm going to share today are, one is going to be called DigiNotes, and this concept is just the idea of notes that can be taken digitally and what that means for us being able to understand what students have learned. The other one, which Casey has shown a lot to you guys about, is the power of video. And actually, Don Goebel, same person. Don, we need to tweet you and tell you how much we're talking about you.
Yeah.
He talks so much about the power of video to have voice, but just the power of video for us to really hear our students' thinking in mind. And then another thing that I'm gonna share with you guys is the internet has allowed us to curate so much work. And so there's a lot of curation tools out there that can help us really not just glance into what students have learned, but students can also sort of learn from each other at the same time. And then the last thing that I'm going to briefly touch on is this idea of, oh, I can't spell, guys, sorry, multi-touch notebooks. And my students actually said that was a mouthful, and so they prefer to call this iNotebooks, kind of like iPads. And the power of that. So if you want, you can go ahead and take a picture of this with your phone on your screen right before I start showing you some student work. So these are the 4 sort of windows that we're going to look into. All right. Okay. Hey, back to me. All right, so I'm going to show you some student work so that we can kind of take a look at why these would be more powerful than simply just a quick quiz or simply something on paper that the students can turn in like a worksheet. And while we share these, know that these are tools kind of like how Casey's are, where they are iPad centered, because I'm in a school that is iPad one-to-one. However, that doesn't mean that just because you have Chromebooks or computers or something like that, that you can't use these same concepts, because what I gave you isn't for apps, but for types of formative assessment. So it's just a matter of you constantly, you know, thinking about, could this app do this, or could this tool do this kind of like digital notes idea? Okay, so I should be sharing. Do you guys see like a pink screen right now?
We do.
Awesome. Okay, so this is a toolbox of different things different apps that could be used on the iPad for what we call DigiNotes. And Currently, my school is using one called Pinnick. This one is paid. However, there's so many things that can do this. Like I know that at our Apple Institute, we played a lot with paper, and Padlet is a popular one, and Poplet. And I know that as like months, weeks, days go by, that there's going to be new apps that come our way. Okay, so if you take a look at this one, this is an example of Corculus. It's an app that my students learned how to use sticky notes and tape and all these different ways to jot their thinking when they're reading. And I taught them, you know, here are the tools that you can do, but I'm not telling you how you have to make this board. So if you see that they have, can you guys see a mouse when I'm pointing?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so you can see like they've sketched, they've written, this student has labeled, and I loved this because one, when a student jots when they're reading, which is something we always want them to do, it's very isolated, and they also fall out of pages, and I can't actually see like how are you tying information across the text, which is much more of a higher level of reading that I want them to be able to get to. So the first thing I noticed, or maybe the first thing you notice, is that this student is a little very organized and likes to have 2 sticky notes for every single chapter. Probably something I said once to the student, right? And it's really great. But because I could see this, I immediately knew what I wanted to teach them next. I knew that they were really thinking about text by chapters and not through a cross text, like, you know, noticing theme across text. And so when I looked at this board, this is something they did during their reading, so during learning time. And this is something I was able to use as formative assessment to decide what I'm going to teach next. And I decided that I wanted to teach them how to organize sticky notes, but by characters instead.
Hey, Catherine.
Yes.
We got a question. Can we interject real quick?
Yeah,
Angela,
of course.
Angela, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, is that like done through an app, or is that an app teaching them how to arrange like sticky notes and their thoughts?
So this is done through an app. So students had these apps on their iPad, and they did it on there. However, there's so many other tools online and on the iPad that you can do the same thing. Really, if you look at like any app that a business might use for brainstorming, you can turn it into a tool for DigiNotes.
Okay,
Just a
cool.
digital bulletin board. Yeah.
And the one comment I'll make, Angela, is sometimes I'll find an app that's pretty versatile and can do a lot of different things, and I might find 2 or 3 of them and set my students out to experiment with them and kind of narrow it down to which ones work well and which don't, and have those discussions with my kids.
For sure.
So,
Yeah, for sure. Like I would teach one tool, DigiNote tool at a time, but then these students actually ended up choosing which one worked best for them.
Yeah.
So this was only one of them. So if you notice though, like this was their second board, and to me, even though it wasn't as organized, this is much more progress to me because this Post-its now are organized by character, which means that they are tying, they're looking at character development across text. And so this work during their reading time was great formative assessment for me, way more powerful than like a quiz after a test, because this is showing me how they're seeing information across the text. So what they could also do, what I love, is the ability for a formative assessment to become also something that's transferable to further reading or further learning. So each of these boards became another book that this student read, and I got to see it. And it's kind of like, you know how we have like a digital library of books, but wouldn't it be great if we had digital libraries of thoughts? And I think that was what's really great about these DigiNotes. This also is a great bulletin board tool for even math formative assessment. And instead of having them answer questions, you know, I said, okay, I want you to take pictures of any angles that you had. So this originally was actually all over the place and scrambled. And then I taught them about right angles, obtuse angles, and acute angles. And then I said, okay, now I want you to sort all your personal pictures. What a great way of students applying their learning authentically, and for me to be able to formatively assess their understanding. So much better than a quiz, no copying, and it's very personalized for them. Young readers can do it too through sketching. This is actually an example of a 6th grader right now in social studies class. And then what I love too is like the pre-assessment work that you can do. This is not on the iPad, this is actually online, and I had the students post a sticky note after I've asked a question, but what was great is before they even came to class the next day, I could quickly sort it and be able to formally decide, like, okay, these have it, these focus on the detail, these kids missed it. And this kind of more qualitative work gave me much more information on how to teach them, not just that I need to teach them. Okay, so that was DigiNotes. And now I would like to share with you guys the other window that I wanted to highlight, which is the power of video. And let me see if I can.
While she's pulling it up, how you guys feeling out there? Angela, Laura?
I'm doing good.
Any
I'm
other
glad to see
questions?
some math examples. Yay. English.
Okay, so this is just a snippet of a longer video, but this student wanted to show their understanding of long division using a specific strategy of estimation. And notice how instead of the student answering this question on a quiz, how much more I learned about what I needed to help the student with.
30 divided by 28. Alright, so let's start with that. So I know 2 divided by 28 is impossible, so I'm going to put a 0 here. And then I'm going to look at this entire number right here. 22 divided by 28 is impossible, so I'm going to put a 0 there. Alright, so now let's look at this whole number right here. 225. Alright, so I know that this is a pretty big number, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use estimation with multiplication. So 28 is 30, so let's try multiplying 30. So I know 30 times 3 equals 90, so let's double that. So 30 times 6 equals 180 because we're doubling, but you don't double the 30. Just remember that. Alright, but that's too small. So what we're going to do is we might take it down a notch or take it up a notch. So let's try taking it up a notch. So 30 times 7 equals, well, I know that 7 times 3 is 21, plus a 0 is 210. So that would equal 210. Alright, so since we've done that, let's take it up a notch one more. So 30 times 8 equals, I know that 8 times 3 is 24.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm saying yes because I love this.
Okay. So if you notice that just from that, I didn't just learn that they understood estimation, using estimation to divide, that I also learned that he's understanding number sense, he's understanding the idea of doubling, and he's using language. And what was really great was that was great formative assessment for me, but then I showed it to my students, and it clicked with some students that didn't click when I worked with that student. So when formative assessment can also be used as teachable opportunities, that's extremely powerful. Yeah. So, okay, let me show you a third. I'm looking at the time, and I'm keeping aware that I want to make sure I honor that. Let me go ahead and share with you about curation and what I mean by that. And I'm going to, let's see, let me share my entire screen with you guys. So one great example of curation is using Padlet. Padlet is a web tool, and it's accessible on the iPad. Not as it is available as an app, but it's actually even better in the regular browser. So I used to actually create a lot of videos as a flipped lesson where I would teach them a specific strategy in math or reading or science. And what I liked was the accountability that I wanted them to have. And I didn't necessarily want them to, just answer a quick question. I wanted them to show me that they are applying this learning to their own reading or their own math work. And so I had them, I made a link on Padlet, and I can certainly share with you guys directions on how to create a Padlet later. But they would always go to this link, and they would just double-click anywhere on the screen and post their strategy. So if you notice here, all of these look somewhat similar in the sense that they all have like this little stick person. It was because of a strategy I taught them in reading. And I asked them to read independently on their own book, and then I said, use the same strategy for the book that you're reading. And they did. I didn't tell them how, kind of like what Casey was saying. Like, here's one common learning goal, but you guys choose the medium that you want. And so they did, and they showed me. And this was really great because it showed their personality. I got to see, you know, what worked for them, but then I also got to determine what small groups I needed to teach, what kinds of lessons I needed to teach these students. And then what's great about this, like kind of like what I drew earlier about the person to person, is that my students loved also even learning from each other. It was like confirmation for them, like, oh, okay, so other students in my class are doing the same thing. So that's just a little bit about curation tools. And then the last thing I wanted to show you is it's my whole screen that's showing right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and straight into this. So multi-touch notebooks or iNotebooks, it's kind of like taking notes on paper, except when you take notes on an iPad, it's multimedia, and the students can actually choose how to show their understanding. And so my students actually used an app called Book Creator, but you can use lots of different other book creating apps. And for a concept, let's say we had a unit of study on measurement. It wasn't that they had to create these after they finished learning the unit. It was actually one of the stations during class, and I said, you know, you will work on your iNotebook and show your understanding. These creations that they did on Book Creator, they were able to export these as an ebook or a multi-touch book, which means that you can actually touch and interact with the pages and be able to learn more from it. So if you know this notebook is all about measurement, and they got to choose, you know, their images, and they could import videos just like the one that my student Zach did, and also type over it, and these are like pages like a book. They also, for this student, they wanted to show their understanding of finding a perimeter of a complex figure by drawing this time and not by a video. And then they also wanted to take a picture of the charts I had in class. And why I say this is formative assessment during learning is that he's learning, he's explaining this stuff during class time, but it's such rich content for me because I can see that the student is, you know, taking what we're learning, documenting it, using visuals to show it, but I'm also seeing misconceptions, and I can teach into this kind of work. Mm-hmm. So that's multi-touch notebooks. I'm going to show you one more example because girls tend to have examples that look a little bit different. So you can see this is a little bit more fancy. But I love, yeah, it's so much prettier, and it looks way more attractive, but it's the same content, and it's actually interesting because it looks really, really amazing, but you can, sometimes with the girls, they look amazing, and you look deep into it, and you realize, wow, there's a lot of errors. But she liked to even document her work, so instead of like a portfolio or like turn in worksheets every single time, I said, okay, in your iNotebooks, like show an evidence that you really understand mixed numbers. So she decided to take pictures of that. Mm-hmm.
And I love how you're showing the combination of both the written analog work and the digital, because that's so crucial. So kind of the misconception of some of what goes on in my class is it's all technology, but it's really not. It's really about the experience and the processes, and we do a lot of similar work to this, combining both.
Yeah, it's Kristen Zemke talks a lot about the balance between text and tech. And I think that like Casey, your school is so unique in like the passion and the philosophy you guys have behind the work that you do. But at like my school, one of the things that we are faced with is that we have students who go home and they don't have always the tools that are needed. And also, we have lots of students who are second language students, lots of students who are special ed students, and everybody has a different learning style. And we want to show them that there's times to use technology and there's times not to use technology, and how valuable it is to be able to know to learn the affordances of each.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what I loved about what both of you showed us today is the students are in control of the technology throughout this entire process. I mean, the technology is not controlling the experience of the students. So, you know, that's really crucial with the authentic assessment pieces. These are tools that students can create and demonstrate their learning in multiple ways. So
yeah, and the last thing I just had to share is I quickly put together, and Casey, I sent you a message if you want to add some stuff to it. I put together a Padlet with some of the resources I just shared with you, or images I shared with you, a formative assessment, and I'm going to actually type it in to the chat. It's just padlet.com/HaleK/form assessment. That way, if you ever want to add your own personal examples or know of other better resources, you can certainly add to that. But hopefully that gives you an idea of like how there's two different kinds of formative assessment, both valuable, but you can get a lot from this kind of like formative assessment that's during learning time, and you can really get a lot of valuable information from it.
Awesome. And I also put in the chat box, I put our Twitter hashtag, our class hashtag in there.
Cool.
If you have a chance and you can post your resources to our Twitter hashtag, that'd be super cool.
Yeah, I'll tweet it.
What are you thinking, Becca?
I'm thinking this was spectacular, and I said it earlier and I'll say it again. I mean, really, I feel like a lot of our role is to show our students where to find resources to troubleshoot and improve upon ideas. And I think that's what we want to do with our students as well, not give them information, but teach them how to find information and give them the critical thinking skills to then use it. So I feel like, we're modeling to future teachers how to impart skills to their future students. So I feel like this has been really an on-point GHO. Like, I've absolutely loved it. And I hope that everyone will stick around for Billy and I to moderate PST main, EdChat main tonight on Twitter at 8:30. So, this was only the first half of Becca and Billy's EDU300 marathon evening.
Yeah, right? Go big or go home.
Yeah, it's great.
That's awesome.
Okay, are there any being respectful of time, it's just past 8. That was fabulous. Both of you got all of your, you basically squeezed every last minute out of the hour in such a good way. That was just perfectly, it was perfect, it was well done. But are there any questions before we take off here, Angela or Laura?
Not that I can think of. I'm definitely going to go back and look at all the resources that we have on here and listen again, but I can't think of any questions right yet.
Yeah, and again, we've mentioned it before. Try not to be overwhelmed. We're definitely throwing a lot of things at you. And I know probably Casey and Catherine would agree. Remember back to the time when they were in college, whether it be their undergrad or their masters, there was times when I felt like, holy smokes, like when is this all going to come together?
Yeah.
And it will come together, and it'll come together in the way that will work well for your students and work well for you. But more than anything, this course, and I know Becca and I have talked about this, it's the idea of this mindset we want to put in you. You can do anything with your students, and your students can do anything with you. So hopefully we're shifting mindsets and we're getting you guys thinking 21st century and thinking of all the awesome possibilities that are there for you and your kids. What do you think, Becca?
Yeah, and just for whatever it's worth, while I'm watching Catherine and Casey, I haven't been in a one-to-one iPad or Apple school, so I'm watching what they're doing. I'm thinking, man, I wish I could do that. Yet, I can relate to and see the common pedagogy behind what they're doing. So it's very much less about the tools and the thing behind how we implement the tools. So that's what I really want you to take away.
Yeah, the kind of when Casey was talking at the end, you were talking about redefinition, Casey, and really what made the redefinition phase of your example, trying to think back, was that essential question you asked. And it was all about how can you impact the community. So that's one thing I love about technology is how you can reach literally reach a global audience and students can have their voices heard. And it's pretty incredible what the technology allows us to do. But like Becca just said, it's not about the app, it's about the experience. And we're just, we're so thankful you guys came on tonight. And Laura just said everything was presented in a way I could understand, so very well organized, and she wants to be a student in your classes, Casey and Catherine. So. And also, Laura's got one more question. Casey, she's from Melrose, and she was wondering if you had taught anywhere nearby. Oh, you already.
So I taught in Needham, Massachusetts, and then I also taught in Charlestown, right in inner city Boston.
Cool.
I don't know.
All right, so everybody, Billy and I could chat until who knows.
Yeah.
another hour, 2 hours. So I think we should wrap this one up and get ready for the next round in about 25 minutes. Catherine, Casey, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Thanks, Angela and Laura, for joining, and for Billy for making the connection.
Cool.
And I'm going to go relax.
Yay,
All right. Bye-bye
thank
now.
you guys for having us.
Thank you.